Section 8.2.23, a researcher studying public opinion of proposed Social Security changes obtains a simple random sample of 35 adult Americans and asks them whether or not they support the proposed changes. To say that the distribution of the sample proportion of adults who respond yes is approximately normal, how many more adult Americans does the researcher need to sample in the following cases? So, in Part A, 12% of all adult Americans support the changes. So, the sampling distribution is approximately normal if n times p times 1 minus p is greater than or equal to 10 is correct, where p is the percent of Americans who support the changes. Now, the new sample size n must suit this condition, and then find the difference between n and the initial size of the sample. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to check the condition for the distribution that's concerned, which means that we want to check where we have n times p times 1 minus p is equal to 10. Okay, so in our problem for Part A, we know that P is equal to 0.12, which is the 12%. Okay, but we don't know what the value of N is. But we can figure that out if we manipulate this equation a little bit. So if we want to solve for N, we can divide both sides of this equation by P times 1 minus P. And over here we have p times 1 minus p. So therefore we can say that n is going to equal 10 over p times 1 minus p. And now we're going to plug in the information that we have. So we know that we have 10. We know that the value of p is 0.12. And then it's going to be 1 minus 0.12. So now if we solve that, then we can figure out what n is. Well, n is going to be approximately 95. Now let's confirm that. So we have 10 divided by, we have 0.12 times, that would be 0.88. And that gives us, and it rounds it up to 95. So it's approximately 95. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we need to then find the difference between n and the initial size. So the initial size is given as 35 adults. So we're going to let the initial size, we're going to call it n subscript 0 as the initial, and that's going to equal 35. Okay? And so therefore, we want to find the difference between n and the initial size. So that means that we know that the n that we found was 95. So we're looking for n minus n subscript 0. So therefore, we're going to take 95 and we're going to subtract 35. And therefore, that's going to give us 60. And so therefore, we can say that the researcher must ask 60 more American adults to satisfy those conditions. Okay, now let's take a look at Part B. It's saying that we have 70% of all adult Americans support the changes. So again, what we're going to do here is we have the formula n times p times 1 minus p, and that's going to equal 10. Where here we can see that p is 0.17 and we're looking for the value of n. So again, if we divide both sides by p times 1 minus p, and therefore n is going to equal 10 divided by p times 1 minus p. So that's going to equal 10 over 0.17 times 1 minus 0.17. And so therefore n is going to be approximately 71. So just like in the previous step, we're going to let the initial again equal 35 from the question. And we know that the n that we found here in part 1 is 71. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the difference. We're going to take n and then subtract the initial. So we have 71 minus 35, which gives us a value of 36. And so therefore, we can say that the researcher must ask 36 more American adults.